Good evening. A very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for giving us the time on this panel today. It is 6:26. Vandana, do I have time therefore till 7:05? Yes. Okay, let's try and see how far we get. The topic today for our panel is really what does it mean to build everyday resilience of the most vulnerable communities that we have. Resilience building is a multifaceted area. It requires a host of actors across multiple levels. That is why you see this diverse range of actors that we have here. We've tried to bring together people who represent different aspects of the ecosystem so that we can try and bring out as many perspectives as we can. So we really don't have too much time. Like we said, we have till 7:05. I believe there are some bouncers hanging around who might just physically evict us. We do deeply respect the experience. I think there's 150 years plus of a pool of experience here. We deeply respect that. But let's try and see how we can and we can't sort of bring it together in 2 minutes each, but let's see how we can do on that. Okay? Thank you. I just want to spend a minute on what's been our evolving understanding of everyday resilience. And I think at the core of it, of course, it is the ability to bounce back, and not just bounce back, but actually have a sustained well-being for the long term as a result of having come through the shock. And I think this takes, it's going to take several aspects to come together in an integrated manner. And what are some of those aspects? Like I said, this is an evolving understanding. One, of course, it will be to build agency and confidence at the core community. Build their hope and confidence, build their capabilities. The second area is also about how do we ensure sustained services, be that in education, be that in livelihoods, be that in climate, because climate intersects pretty much every aspect, and of course livelihoods. I think the third critical area, an area that actually perpetuates vulnerability, how do you influence factors like gender norms, like the biases that we have, deep-seated, really long-term to set right. Structurally, how do we intervene to really enable resilience building? And I think fourthly is really systemic capability at the public level, at the private level, at the governance level, to really then build systemic resilience. So I think this is our working evolving framework. Let me now get engaged with the panel on this front. We'll try and enable a cross-panel discussion. We'll try and see if we can engage the audience as well. My first question really is for each of us to think about the predominant community. And when I say community, need not necessarily mean grassroots. A set of organizations that I work with, a set of systems that I work with, have anything that you predominantly work with in mind. Think of a rating, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5. If 1 is the least and 5 is the highest, so least resilient, most resilient, what was that rating before the pandemic hit us? And what is that rating today? I'll give you a minute to think about, tell us which community you're thinking about, or which group of audiences you're thinking about. What was their resilience before? What is it today? I'm opening this up to the audience as well. Can we have the barcode? Okay. All you have to do is scan this barcode. You can participate in this poll as well. Okay? Zoom in, scan the barcode. It'll take you to a Google form. There are 3 very simple questions. Respond to that, and we'll try and bring the results together at the end of this discussion. Yes, Dr. Smith.
Startups.
Okay. How resilient were they before?
I think it was around 2.
Okay.
And now it would be 4.5.
Okay. Sure. Thank you. Yes, Deepa.
I come from Edelgive Foundation, and at Edelgive we've kept the NGOs, the small and the mid-sized NGOs, always at the center of everything we do. So I am talking about the small and mid-sized NGOs, a large group of them with whom we've had the opportunity to interface through the course of the pandemic. So definitely, I think this group, maybe they had a resilience of, I don't know, 2, 3, and
Okay.
probably they've fallen down much more. So I don't know. I mean, what
Okay.
kind of rating I can really give them? Yeah.
Sure, but it's dropped from where they were.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Deepa. Yes, Dr. Neeta.
Yeah, I am actually referring to vulnerable communities.
Okay.
And I think pre-pandemic, I would rate it as 3, which is basically an average. And post-pandemic, I would rate as 1.5. And what I actually want to convey in my message is that the vulnerability increased, resilience was severely impacted. However, given the collective effort, both within the community and in the ecosystem, I wouldn't say it's very bad right now, like 0.5 or 1, but it's around 1.5 because they were severely hit, and it will take time for the communities to come back to average.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Neeta. Anand?
Actually, I want to put the same point. Since she already covered, I switched to the other one. This is related to the migrant community. So, in fact, when the Prime Minister declared the lockdown and asked the people to stay at homes, millions of people started walking back. They respected the Prime Minister's voice because their house is not where they are working. Their house is where their loved ones are staying.
Sure.
We have seen the misery at the highest level it's playing. And that point of time, we worked in collaboration with the government of Jharkhand, especially when I say we means FIA Foundation and the network of NGOs in Jharkhand. And on the 27th of March, it started the helpline. That's called Migration Control Helpline. Started at the Mantralaya with 20 volunteers, became 150. And during the entire process, they touched almost 1.2 million migrant workers, out of which 800,000 returned safely back home. So I think that's where I could see that it's not that they have reached completely, but during the crisis, this process has helped to touch the lives. Before it was 1, I put it less than 1 because hardly there's any organized effort at that scale to work. But during the process, it's almost, I can say, 2 to 2.5. A lot more to do.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Anand. जी प्रिया जी बोलिए.
ओके मैं ट्रांस कम्युनिटी के बारे में बात करना चाहती हूँ. बिफोर कोविड उनका जो रेटिंग मैं 4 देती हूँ क्योंकि पिछले जो इयर्स में दे आर फेसिंग लॉट ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स, तो उनको ओवर करना आता है. कैसा कम्युनिटी से डीलिंग करना, लोगों से कैसा बात करना, कैसा हिसाब से लोगों हमारे पास बात करते हैं, वो हिसाब से उनको डीलिंग करना आता है क्योंकि वो रेगुलर जिंदगी में होता है. मगर आफ्टर द कोविड आई गिविंग 2 to 2.5 क्योंकि बहुत डिक्रीज हो गया क्योंकि ये पैंडमिक टाइम पे उनको उनका रूटीन लाइफ चेंज हो गया. मेनली उनका जो इकोनॉमिकल जो जनरल इकोनॉमिकल स्टेट कमाई का जो रास्ता है वो टोटली बंद हो गया क्योंकि उनका बाकी जो कम्युनिटी लोग का जो कमाई का रास्ता अलग है, उनका डेली कमाई का वो कमाई एकदम ही बंद है. अभी किसी से भी बात करने के टाइम को ये सोचते कल का दिन कुछ हो जाएगा तो मैं क्या करूं. तो इसके लिए एक उनका अंदर एक डर भी अभी भी पैदा है क्योंकि हमेशा जो मीडिया में हम तो कहा देना मीडिया में नया जो डिसीज के बारे में बात करते हैं, अभी ये आने वाला वो आने वाला करके, तो ये उनका जो कम हो रहा है.
कम हुआ है. ओके, थैंक यू प्रिया. अनीश?
My audience is largely the health institutions. Prior to pandemic, there was a resilience in them to respond to epidemics and to public health emergencies. So I would rate it at around 3, and COVID has brought the resilience up to 4 because now we have learned to respond to much larger scale. We have now bigger network. The private sector roped in. The civil society organizations roped in. So we have improved a lot, but we still have a long way to go. So it's still 4.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Aakash. Yes, Anish.
So I'm referring to the bottom pentile of our villages. That's roughly about 100,000 odd villages. That's the geography and the communities residing there, and it includes both the Nivasis and the Pravasis. So it includes the migrants also. So before pandemic and over the years, I've seen they are in a declining low equilibrium. So it's about 2. And post-pandemic, there has been a lot of positives, there has been a lot of shocks. It has been up and down. I guess it stays roughly around that. And maybe you could, just for this sheer survival, you could add a plus to 2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I think let's deepen this conversation. I think what you see across the group is some groups have sort of gone up a little bit. Health systems, for example, have sort of gone up because there's been a learning curve that we've gone through, but other vulnerable populations, it seems to have gone down. Let me start with posing my question to Priya. Priya ji, आप transgender community represent करती हैं. अगर मैं कह दूँ कि grassroots communities के साथ जब हम resilience build करना चाहते हैं, उनका hope increase करना है, उनका confidence increase करना है, पर उसके आड़े what is the biggest challenge? That one challenge, I'm also sort of using this opportunity to draw one key lesson from each of you. So that's sort of what's the one thing kind of around. So Priya ji, वो एक चीज़ क्या है? What's the biggest challenge that will come in the way of building hope and confidence and capabilities of the most vulnerable population?
मोस्टली मैं जेंडर बात करता हूँ क्योंकि मैं जेंडर के बारे में जो लोगों का नजरिया है वो बहुत बड़ा सवाल है क्योंकि अभी जो कम्युनिटी आफ्टर द कोविड अभी कुछ भी करके आगे आना चाहते हैं मगर मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम जो लोगों का नजरिया ये था इनको क्या होता है क्योंकि वो सारा वल्नरेबल कम्युनिटी के बारे पास उनका ऐसा ही दिखावट भी ऐसा दिखाते क्योंकि कभी वो नया चीज़ उन्होंने करना चाहते नहीं तो नया कुछ इनोवेशन करना चाहते तो उनका दिल में इनके पास क्या है उनको क्या पता है और yesterday भी मेरे का एक एक्सपीरियंस था एक गाड़ी वाला मेरे पास मेरे साथ में आया एक रोड पे सिग्नल में ट्रांसजेंडर खड़े थे बोला ये लोग गंदे लोग हैं मेरे सामने वो बोल रहा है क्योंकि ये जो नजरिया से कभी जो ये नजरिया जो अटके आने के बाद ही ये सब उनको बिल्ड कर सकते हैं अदरवाइज इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट क्योंकि कभी मैं ट्रैवलिंग करने के टाइम पे मैं बाजू में बैठने वाले भी बोलते कुछ दूर बैठते क्योंकि उनको मेरा वॉइस देखने के बाद डर लगता है ये क्या ये इधर क्या आया एयरपोर्ट में मैं कभी मैं वो फेस भी करती हूँ क्योंकि सामने बाजू में बैठने वाला मेरा आवाज देने के बाद दूर जाते इधर ऐसा भी चीज अभी भी है बिकॉज अभी भी कम्युनिटी का जो पोर्ट्रेट स्पेशली ट्रांस कम्युनिटी के बारे में पोर्ट्रेट अभी भी ये बैडली है ये चीज थोड़े से दुनिया का जो नजरिया उनका दिमाग से हटने के बाद हमको थोड़ा से रेजिलिएंट जो डेवलप करना अच्छा है
Thank you, Priya ji. Anand, I want to take this question to you. I think you've extensively worked with factors that perpetuate vulnerability. I think Priya has brought up the whole gender and how this community is viewed by others. I think if that's not sort of fixed or at least minimized, resilience building, I'm sure will not go anywhere. In your experience, what's that one thing if we were to unlock structurally that would give us a positive step forward towards resilience building for the vulnerable?
I think very, very difficult one to answer, but I think that's important to take the difficult one should be the first priority. We do it when we talk from a vulnerability, quite often we only look from an emergencies point of view, but at the same time, there are deep social, economic, traditional, structural causes that keeps people at the lowest. Look at the Adivasi population in this country, 7%, but they disproportionately represents the maximum poorest in this country, followed by scheduled caste. Almost 30 years if Adivasis are behind in terms of the general economic indicators. Same is the case with the other vulnerable communities. It's important we recognize that there are deep structural social issues that is keeping significant populations of this country at extreme poverty, exclusion, discrimination. The interesting part is the Constitution of India, the state recognized this and took several measures to protect. The challenge is society has not yet come in terms with these principles of equality, justice. If we can put that into our practice, don't make the issue of gender equality as a struggle of women, nor the same case with Adivasi empowerment cannot be left only to the Adivasi, or fighting the discrimination of human rights abuses against the Dalit or scheduled caste should not be their own battle. It should be the battle of every citizen who believes in the constitution, power of equality, and social justice. If that we can do, I think rest of the things could be taken care of.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's so well said, Anand. Would really help if you could throw some light on what your lessons in that space towards collaborative action and resilience building.
Thank you. So during the COVID, we had several innovations coming, right across our window from all kinds of areas, and we were wondering how do we evaluate them quickly, and how do we get them to be implemented, how do we scale them up, because some of them were somewhere in TRL levels, lower TRL levels and so on. So we sought help from the industries actually, and they came forward not only with funding, but they also gave us technical expertise on the move, and we quickly made our own models and frameworks right from hospitals. We actually one of the innovators for that matter, in 3 months time he could kind of construct the entire hospital. So we did about 53 such hospitals across the nation, with the state government providing us with about 15,000 square feet of land, and you know that even inch of land is very difficult to get from a state government. But we managed to do that, and also got this innovation going in 3 months' time. And similarly, you have got your reagents, which is part of the testing kits. Because of COVID, we also got the technicians. The lab technicians had no clue how to test COVID, but we did an entire pan-India. Thanks to again Gates Foundation, we did the entire training as well as capacity building and so on. So every be it innovation, be it technology, be it training, capacity building, all of that needed to be done parallelly. Sure. So the whole thing was that we were not ready for any such. First of all, we didn't know that there were so many innovations which were there, which the startups, actually the youngsters, were the ones who came up with these innovations. So we had no clue that we had so many innovations. Second is we didn't know how to quickly ramp it up and scale it up and implement it. However, we did pretty well. And what we liked was the way the collaborators came in. They didn't think that we are industry and we are startups, we are NGOs or anything of that sort. Everybody came in, all of us worked together and quickly got that whole thing going. But so that's what is being extrapolated now, and we are trying to do it in other areas of waste management, water, climate, and all of that. And the same partners are actually still there, and in fact, it's growing. So we were a very small team managing all of this. So now we realize that we need to have a IT platform at least, where all these stakeholders can come and directly engage with each other. So on 15th of August, we just inaugurated the Manthan platform, which is where all the stakeholders can come, opportunities can be provided, innovations can be housed, and people can make their own models. They can also kind of exhibit their innovations and get into a virtual meeting room of this sort, and discuss and so on and take things forward. So that's the thing that we thought there should be a platform.
Thank you, Dr. Sapna. I have a follow-up question which I want to pose to everybody, but I'll just wait for it, which is there's a huge discovery process that all of us have gone through in these last 2.5 years, and huge capacities have been identified and created. And how do we sort of get them to fire at the right time going forward will be probably my last question, but I'd like to sort of open it up. I want to come back to the ground, and Anish, you've through your work at TRIF have been exposed to the communities directly, as well as the institutions that work with those communities. What's the one lesson that you have from the ground on collective agency? Because individuals, yes, it's easier to work with individuals, but when you look at communities and collective agency, what's that one big lesson that you'd like to share?
So in some ways, collective agency in the psychosocial literature, Bandura has talked a lot about it, and he uses it in a particular way. But what COVID did teach us, in some ways, multiple things. But one is, जब अपने पर बन पाती है तो लॉकडाउन ही सहारा है. So what it did was, in the villages, in the name of social bubble, it created a reality check, a reality bubble for the people there. And these were women collectives, the panchayats, and most interestingly, we discovered the front line of the local administration. It could be the AAA, Asha NM, Anand workers, the school teacher, or the local JE. So they were left on their own. So whatever we talk these days, whether we talk of, as Ilaben talks of 100-mile society, or you talk of hyper-local, right? The fact of the matter during those difficult 3 months was people had themselves in that bubble. Even if their migrant relatives were coming back, they had to take care of them. So locality compacts is one big learning that, and in variety of ways, the neighborhood localities, government also has done a lot. Few of us have been working a lot, and that is one big learning for us. Is skin in the game, as Talib puts it. They have the skin in the game. People sitting here or outside, they don't have a skin in the game. You got to accept that. And if you leave that to the localities, the people there, they will find a way to build resilience, build collective agency, build collective efficacy. So much so that now actually we have built a program around that, and working with Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Panchayats, and the respective state governments to roll out this locality compacts. And we have prototyped our learning, and have now with the Development Management Institute offering that as a program for locality development program, working with these nodes in the state. So that is one big learning. If I can slip in, the second learning is do not underestimate the state. Without the state, and as I said, the constitutional scheme of things that we have in our country, we would have been in a very, very poor state. And without that Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Kalyan or the expanded PDS, whatever man you call it, the state and the state capacity, again, that's enormous learning for all of us who are working on resilience, is to work to somehow strengthen and unlock the state capacity. We haven't spent enough attention and quality time and innovation around that.
Thank you, Anish. I think that leads me to Dr. Aakash. You've extensively worked with health systems. I think in continuation with the fact that we need to work with the system, we need to work with multiple systems. What are your lessons from working with systems that help build resilience at the systemic level, and then of course cascading down to the communities?
The area that I work primarily is climate and health. When I talk about, because it's probably in the new collaborative, climate is also a component. So what I say that when we talk about climate tends to impact any human being, or maybe the health of a human being, in two ways. It impacts firstly and foremostly from the way that it impacts the economy. It erodes the livelihood, it erodes probably the social protection measures that people have, and that probably is the thing that matters the most and foremost to most of the people in the community. The other way that it impacts, it is directly impact on health, and it is an invisible killer. Why I say it's an invisible killer? Because when the child has an asthma, or there is a man who succumbs to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or probably collapse with a cardiovascular condition, it is very unlikely that a medical practitioner is going to write that this man collapsed on account of air pollution or extreme weather. It's never unlikely to happen, and that's why it's an invisible killer. But when you look at the magnitude at which it impacts, that magnitude is far, far more than probably most of the other diseases we talk about in our daily lives. The air pollution itself on 1 year kills about 17 lakhs of Indians. Look at the magnitude at which it impacts. So it's invisible, people do not recognize it. When I talk about the resilience, as in health sector, for me, who works in the health sector, resilience means is to build the health workforce, to make the health system function better, and to improve the health infrastructure. But when I talk about community, the one takeaway point, as you say, probably for the people here would be we can only deal with the impact of climate change on health if the community understands how climate impacts their lives. It's only with that level of sensitization, awareness, knowledge tools that you can build with the people, make them understand that impact is the way that they will come forward and seek help and make the difference.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Aakash. We have two of our panelists who come from the financing side of things. So, Deepa, to you, at Edelgive, you all have focused a lot on building organizational resilience. From that journey, what's that one lesson that we need to consider as we move forward together on building institutional resilience or organizational resilience?
Thank you so much, Shilpa, for this question, and this is something definitely very close to my heart and to Edelgive's heart as well. I want to rewind a little bit back, when COVID hit us and how the NGOs and the staff really worked tirelessly for the communities, right? I mean, tirelessly, sometimes at the expense of themselves and their families, and they really looked after the needs of the communities. So the question is, who is actually looking after the needs of the NGOs and the staff, right? I mean, while they are looking after the needs of the communities, there needs to be somebody who is looking after the needs of the staff. And, traditionally funders have funded programs and, more elevated, people who have an elevated level of thinking. They have funded systems and processes to strengthen organizations and, make the NGOs be more effective in their program delivery. But what I'm talking about here is really a level above it, where we're talking about building welfare. We're talking about building the well-being of the staff and the organizations who are actually delivering the impact on the ground. And I think that was, in a way, the genesis of Edelgive's GROW Fund, which really stands for Growth, Resilience, Opportunity and Well-being. And, Edelgive, along with a whole set of funders, the idea really is to build those strong, resilient organizations who are future ready and who will be able to take such shocks and who will really be able to march forward. And this was not easy, right? And to your point about that one lesson, I think one lesson for us has definitely been mobilizing the funding ecosystem, the funded community, talking about it, more and more, and really walking the talk. I think for us to take the lead and say that, we are showing you the way and also kind of showing the mirror, as funders, you're able to accomplish so much because you have the backing of an institution. You have an entire institution which is backing you. The same is applicable to the needs of the NGOs as well. They need that kind of an institutional backing. And so, I just want to conclude by saying that, we have believed that we need to, as funders, we need to move away, and funders in general have to move away from just funding programs to funding the purposes of the organization and whatever it takes to make that purpose happen. So I think that has been the biggest learning for us.
That's really music to my ears. Thank you, Deepa. Coming from the space of capacity building and institution building myself, I think this is really music to my ears. So thank you so much for that input. Dr. Neeta, finally coming to you, as cliched as it may sound, but it is a reality that funding is siloed, it is programmatic. I'm sure it will continue. But I think the way forward really, and the context for this all of us being here together is collaborative action, is to build resilience, not just at a single unit, but together in concerted ways. What's the future for financing? What's your lesson in terms of what's the route that financing can take? What's the innovation around that?
Thank you, Shilpa, for that question. And you're absolutely right. Funding has its requirements. It's programmatic, it's siloed, and there are strings attached to it. And there's nothing much that could be done about it. And this is true for most of the donors. But we have invested in COVID Action Collaborative, and we have invested in a lot of other collaborators and platforms. So which itself is an evidence of how this could be done. So we have been creative, and I think it's not only us but a lot of donor communities, to ensure that our investments are catalytic. And it complements the other funding streams that are very much required to build resilient communities and systems, right? So as we say, it has to be integrated, there have to be multi-sectoral approach. You definitely need different flavors or different forms of funding that needs to come in. And as far as resilience building is concerned, there has to be a latent capacity that is built within these structures and systems, which can quickly respond to some adverse situation, right? And this means that the funding has to be flexible, it has to be long-term, and it has to be a patient capital. Now, how do you achieve that? It can't happen through one source of funding. So our learning of having invested in collaborators and platforms has been that invest in, I'll actually put it as 4 points. Invest in collective action, which will actually address different needs of the communities and different vulnerabilities of the communities, and have a shared vision towards that. The second important point is invest in adaptive systems which can respond to vulnerabilities and evolving vulnerabilities, because vulnerabilities are not static. Each one of us is vulnerable, and just capture that in time and be able to respond to that in time, again through collective action. It cannot be done by one. The third important thing is have sustainable financing for the initiative, because donors have to exit at some point of time. So how do you make it sustainable? And for achieving that, the fourth important point is to invest in institutional and local capacities and local communities. They are the ones who should own this up and should take it forward. I hope we are able to collectively achieve all of this together, and we have had a lot of lessons from COVID Action Collaborative, and perhaps some of those could be taken forward with Community Action Collaborative.
I hope the right people are all listening to this conversation. Okay, I think we've seen a diverse set of points coming across all facets that probably have to work towards resilience building. Do we have the poll? If we can bring that up. We are, I think, 5 minutes short of when we said we'll finish. Let us see if we can be on time. Okay, I'd love for our panelists also to take a look. If you want to just move to see if. So the black bar is where what was the resilience of that particular community before the pandemic, and what you see in green is after. Not bad. Any reactions from our panelists on any particular one or across? It is an overall positive shift. I think if we can, something's working somewhere, and I hope a lot of it is in this room. Okay. Yes, Anand, you have a point.
Very interestingly, where the NGOs and the grassroots communities, their resilience has come down.
Yeah.
And the funding from the some financial resources, donors have increased. I'm trying to understand, Shiv, you need to unpack where this money has gone. Because we know where the money going and who are the recipients. For the simple reason, yes, let's accept there is a crisis. It badly hit the civil society. and the communities as well.
Sure.
But I think it's interesting, but I think there's a lot more need
yes.
to pack in, but I could see that.
Sure.
A little bit of a surprise.
Sure. Any other thoughts? Yes, Dr. Aakash.
Interesting observation is that the two areas in which the maximum change has been felt by the people is in the area of health and in the area of local governance. So it's a sort of a belief that the people have now gained in the way the local governance and the health sector work. That's
Sure.
what COVID has demonstrated to the people.
Sure, sure. Any other thoughts?
So-
Any? Yes. Yes, Anish, go ahead.
It was very interesting and in some ways intuitive and a bit of counterintuitive. But resilience, it hovers around 2-3, it is equilibrium. Resilience, if anything, it is not equilibrium or static. And I'm just wondering, as Achhe Din Aayenge, is it a religion's mirage? And maybe we got to look at it carefully in terms of how does this translate into onward together? So the onward bit, how do you bring that onward bit into this? And part of it is very positive. So we got to know something. COVID has taught us something.
So what I actually gathered from here is the one that is coming down is for grassroots communities, and the rest all, like post-pandemic, it's assumed or it's our perception that the resilience has improved. So does this actually mean that while we invest in the ecosystem, so going back to the framework of resilience where you have given the 3 circles, right? The individual, household, communities and the ecosystem. So while you invest in the ecosystem, it will really take a lot of time to actually seep through to the communities to build their resilience.
Sure.
So we need to actually invest both ways.
Oh, yes.
And not put entire focus on the systems and ecosystems, but also invest in the communities.
Sure. I think very, very well said, Dr. Neeta. I think there's some really deep reflection that comes from that just one drop that we're seeing for the grassroots organizations. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think resilience is also an often misunderstood term, right? Many of us seem to think of it as, something about just gritting your teeth and, pulling along, come what may, right? I think that is not the definition of resilience we want to go with. Yeah, absolutely. I think resilience is also about having the agency, the power to make choices and, not pulling through in any situation, but really making the best out of any situation. And I think for me, that resilience, that kind of resilience resonates a lot more.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepa. Can we please have a round of applause for all our panelists? Deeply appreciate your inputs, Vandana. It's 7:05. Thank you so much.
Join us as we move onward together.